Tell me more, Rob Bass.
All right. Feedback loops. We were talking about why thoughts are not able to overwhelm things like feeling. Like, why can't you think your way out of a bad mood? Or why can't you think your way out of a belief or something that you've held, or an assumption that you held, or something like that? It's because there's a big difference in energy. So I want to talk about feedback in systems. So feedback in a system is input sending something to an output, the output of which is picked up by the input, and then it cycles continuously. So that's why, like in a microphone, when you plug it in, you get that horrible sound. It's a massive increase in the original signal, because when it came back into the microphone, it was in phase with the reverberating sounds that were already there. So the other sounds in the atmosphere were still vibrating. The amplified one comes back. They link up and create a huge increase in energy. Negative inner feedback is where those crests and troughs are exactly opposite, or opposite of that. So that's how noise canceling headphones work. So they create like a frequency that is the exact opposite of the average ambient frequency that's around you, and it knocks it out. So those are things that happen in these oscillatory loops in the brain. So an oscillatory loop in the brain is a connection between one brain region, say like the thalamus, to another brain region, say the parietal cortex, and creates a cortical parietal loop of information. That's fundamental to how the brain works. So that's how we continuously adjust via a loop between our cerebellum and our motor cortex that is adjusting to account for whatever's going on. So these circuits exist, and when I was talking about the symphony of the brain, these circuits in 3 dimensions are the instruments. These are the things that are playing this song of what we experience. So sometimes, if you were to listen to something, one of the instruments could completely overwhelm everything else, or sort of take over, and that can happen when you create something called a standing wave, which is just when you take energy, you bind it at both ends, so like a jump rope, tied to a doorknob, and flick it back and forth. It looks like it's just standing there because the energy is backing up and lining up. So that can happen when you bound the energy in a space. So, brings me to my very first prop. I love these things. Okay. Oh, I love these things. Okay. So this is a resonating chamber. It's a singing bowl, but it's a resonating chamber. So it's just a bowl, but when you vibrate the material in the correct frequency, that energy can bounce back and forth around this thing and come out with some sort of signal. So that signal can be different depending on a lot of things. So like the machined versions of these are not as cool as the handmade ones, because the handmade ones have all kinds of nooks and crannies and stuff that make the sound bounce off in different, more complex ways. So a bumpy bowl can create quite a bit of energy from something very, very, very small because of this standing wave ability. So we have these oscillating frequencies that are sometimes being positively reinforced and amplified, sometimes being negatively reinforced and shut down. And sometimes if they amplify, they can create these standing waves, because we've got a pretty cool one. So if you get these standing waves, they create like a powerful undertone. So it would be like having this thing, having a little arrangement of these bowls and playing one of them, and it just rings and rings and rings and rings and rings, and then playing a bunch of them that ring for just brief periods of time. So those the brief ones would essentially could either line up with, harmonize with the larger undertone, or become the opposite of that and sound shitty. So these undertones, these standing waves that happen in your brain, are patterns that happen for a variety of different reasons. So it depends on which loop we're talking about. So sometimes it's a physical pattern because of the way that you're like standing. Sometimes it's a thought pattern, like I am unworthy, or I feel guilty because of not being enough, or whatever. So depending on how frequently they're reinforced and how similar the inputs are. So like if you are a kid and you are hearing from a bunch of different angles, you're terrible, you're the worst, they're getting that consistent signal. They don't even need to get it that many times, because if it hits that thing, it can amplify and create these frequencies. The frequencies will stop, but the more these different patterns play, the more likely it is to show up over and over and over and over and over again. And for most of us, we just bang the drum around, and there are all these things that are going around all of the time, and our thoughts can sometimes catch up, but they can't really harmonize with what's going on. And I mean physically banging around our heads, but sometimes. But that is what happens with, or one of the things that happens with concussions, is it throws off the timing of these things.
Of the oscillatory loops.
Of these oscillatory loops, yeah. So all this noise are these things that are being, these things that our thoughts, our movements, our actions are all contributing to. So if I wanted to try to stop a standing wave, I could try to drown it out with everything else, or I could try to do essentially the opposite of that. So if the standing wave was something like, I am not a good person, but then I think a thought like, no, but I am a good person. And I take a stance like, no, this is how good people stand. And I do what good people do, which is be good to others and amplify their sounds and all that kind of stuff. Then that is going to cancel out that oscillation of I'm not a good person pretty easily. It could come back, but the more you cancel it out, the more you down-regulate it, and it doesn't take as long as most people think. It just takes the right things in the right way, focused on the right whatever, to actually line up or not line up.
I like